Two, one, zero, and liftoff.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Recipe for Greatness podcast. Now the goal of this podcast, we're going to be interviewing the founders of some of the best food companies in the UK. I'm going to be teasing out the knowledge and the skills that they've used to grow their business, and hopefully it will inspire you to set up your own. Now this week, we're joined by Claire Connor. She's a founder of The Pie Party. They make the most amazing American-style pies and cookies. And we're going to hear her story about how she set up her food business in a studio flat and grew it. It's going to blow your mind about the story and how she set it up from nothing to where it is now. And it's going to blow all your excuses out the way for setting something out yourself. So please enjoy my interview with Claire Connor. So hi Claire, thanks so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So I want to jump in to the podcast and begin talking about Claire from the beginning. So I know that you went to university and you then studied a master's. So before you got into business, was there a goal that you wanted to do? Was there like a target career that you were planning on going into, or?
I think when I was at uni, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest. So I was just studying subjects that I find interesting. I've always been really ambitious, and I think I saw myself kind of getting onto some graduate scheme after uni, and then just kind of working my way up. But then I graduated in the recession. It was 2009, and it was really hard to get any sort of job. So I just kind of fell into a line of work, basically.
All right. And you fell into finance, I understand. So
Yeah, I did.
What was that like? I mean, especially compared to your life now, what was your kind of day-to-day like when you were working sort of in finance?
I think I kidded myself for a long time that I enjoyed it and it was what I wanted, because I think so many people working in the city, you have this really like inflated sense of self-importance, which is just, now I can look back on it and I just find it like disgusting. But it's so normalized, everyone getting on the train and going into work and wearing your nice suits and earning money. So I kind of kidded myself that I enjoyed it and I wanted it, and was kind of working my way up. And then it was around about the time that I turned 30, and then like a lot of people when they turn 30, they kind of take a look at their lives and ask themselves if they're happy with what they're doing and the direction that it's going. And it was definitely like a big fat no for me. When I kind of looked at, could I do this for like the next 35 years until I retire? I just thought there's absolutely no way. I hate it. I hate everything about it. It's such a toxic culture. So I just started to think about what did I want to do instead. And I'd always loved baking. I've baked for like as long as I can remember with my mum. But it was always just a hobby. I never for a second thought that it was something that I could make a career out of. But around about that time, I think I joined Instagram and I started following all these kind of like home bakers who were making it work. And I just kind of thought, well, if they can do it, then maybe I can as well.
Amazing. And I think it was maybe in about, I could be getting my dates wrong, you can't get the internet for everything, but I mean, I think it was 2016. Did you go to America, or was it New York, and you discovered something? You saw what was going on over there, and that sort of inspired you a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, I did. Well, I'm impressed. Really impressed with your research. So I kind of had the idea that I wanted to maybe start a business, and it would be like baking related, but I was still trying to figure out how to find something unique, because particularly in London there's just so many cake and cupcake brownie businesses and that sort of thing. So I wanted to do something that hadn't been done before. And I was on holiday in New York and I went to this really cool bar and they sold pie, and it just kind of made me think, there isn't a pie business in the UK. Like obviously you can buy pies and people are kind of aware of sweet pies, but there was no business that like solely focused on sweet pies. So that's kind of where the idea came from. And after that, I kind of got started on practicing recipes.
So you kind of had the idea that was what you wanted to do. Did you mentioned you kind of did baking as well at home and things like that, but did you really know how to make sweet pies, or was it a lesson you kind of had to start from the beginning of that?
The idea came before the ability. So I don't think I'd ever even made pastry before, so I had to spend a lot of time teaching myself how to make pastry, and so much pastry went in the bin. You know, it wasn't like I did it first time and thought, oh my god, I'm a natural at this. This is definitely going to work. I persevered and persevered and persevered, and finally kind of started to get somewhere. Yeah, there was a lot of practice.
And was there any approach you took to learning those skills, or was it just time, or was there a way you sort of approached it, maybe learning online, or?
It was a bit of a mixture. So yeah, I mean, I looked at a lot of recipes online and watched a lot of YouTube videos and that sort of thing. And then I bought a few books on making pastry and patisserie and that kind of thing. So it was a kind of combination. But I think the thing about pastry, and you probably know this as well, is that you just have to keep practicing. And I think you can read as much as you want, but because it's so much to do with like the feel of the pastry, you don't, that's not something that you can read about or watch about. You just have to do it. You just have to teach yourself how to make pastry, and then eventually you'll get to a stage and you'll kind of look at it and think, oh wow, I've made pastry, and it works and it's delicious, and I think I've kind of mastered this. But if you don't go to like a chef school and you haven't got somebody teaching you, then it does take time. Pastry is notoriously tricky, but you know,
Do you feel
you
a
get the
bit
hang of it.
crazy? Do you feel a bit crazy when you talk to people and they say like, oh, well, what measurements do you use? And you just say, well, I kind of just know it by feel. And they're like, what? And you just feel like you're a crazy person because that's how you do it now.
Yeah, kind of. And, you know, people have said to me, like, maybe, you know, I should bring out a recipe book or something. And I sort of say, well, I need to write them all down first. And then people are like, well, what do you mean you need to write them down? Where are they? And I'm like, well, they're just in my head. Like, that's just where they are. So anytime I have anybody helping me in the kitchen, I have to like get some pen and paper out and start to write things down. But suddenly dawns on me that the recipe isn't written down anyway.
Amazing.
Yeah, people do think you're crazy.
Yeah, I know the feeling. So you have the idea of what you want to do, and I think it's a great time to like talk about. So you launched a business called A Pie Party. So do you want to tell everyone a little bit about it, like what you do?
Well, the end goal for the business, and right from the start, this has been the end goal, and it's still the end goal, is to have fixed premises. But it's just such a major challenge in London to make that happen. So when I launched the business, I just kind of thought, well, I need to make sure that the concept works and that people want it. And a really good way for any food business to do that, to kind of test the water, proof of concept, I think the corporate term is going to food markets, because again, you know this, you know, they're quite low investment, quite low risk. It's, you know, it doesn't take a lot of money just to kind of get a gazebo and some equipment and go to a food market, and it's a way just to kind of start trading and get a feel for what it could be like without spending loads of money. And we're trying to get loads of investment right at the start to open up fixed premises. So that's how I started. So I started at food markets, and then it's just kind of progressed from there.
Yeah. And I know this is something I really struggle with, but you mentioned sort of that you kind of got into food markets, but going back to what you said, like, so you learned the skill about how to make these, you know, amazing, beautiful pies, but then what was the steps to, you know, get to the point where you're actually physically somewhere selling it? Because I imagine there must have been so much to navigate, from, you know, even naming the company to setting one up, and also like the branding, marketing. How did you navigate all that unknown? I know for me, it was something that I just struggled with so much, and it took me far longer than it should have done.
So for me, all that was like all the fun stuff, like thinking about the name of the business and like the branding and the colors and all that sort of stuff. Like that was all the really fun kind of like creative stuff that I really enjoyed. So I just spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted the business to be like, and what I wanted the kind of the ethos to be like as well. Because I think maybe part of the reason that I wasn't sure about starting a baking business is that I had this idea in my head of what like a baker looked like, and it was all kind of like a frilly floral apron and making little pastel macarons and that kind of thing, you know. Whereas my stuff's never been like that. It's I'm a home baker. I'm not a chef. I'm a home baker, and I'll always be a home baker. But what that means is that it's very much about comfort food. So I always wanted that to come across in the branding, that this isn't some fancy like patisserie business. This is just food that you can really enjoy. But that's, yeah, so that's part of the branding, and for me that was what the fun side of getting the business started was just to think about, how do I want this to come across? And the business is 3 in October, but I would like to think that even now, still with the way that I get things across on social media and that kind of thing, people hopefully still see this as a home baking business that has just kind of progressed a little bit. And it's still like slightly rough around the edges, but I think in some ways that makes it more relatable.
Amazing. And did you reach out to any people at the start? Was it like any like mentors or advisors, or just people who kind of knew the industry that helped you out at all, or did you have to figure this all out yourself?
Mostly I figured it out myself. I set up my business with support from Virgin Startup. So Virgin has a subsidiary business called Virgin Startup that provides loans and mentoring to new businesses. So I went on a few of their courses. I went through, it's quite a lengthy process to get one of the loans, so I applied for that. And I got a 5k loan for buying, gazebo and tables and equipment, and paying like a creative designer to do the logo, all that sort of stuff. But they were meant to match me with a mentor to also help, but the problem was they couldn't find somebody with the skill set that that was needed for the business, because it was a bit too unique, I think, was the problem. So I never actually got a mentor from Virgin. So it was just an awful lot of kind of finding my way myself.
Yeah, it's definitely the toughest bit, just trying to navigate all that area. So
yeah, I mean, as with the food business, there's so much, you have to research, what do you need to have in place before you can start trading? How do you get into food markets? There's a lot to think about when it's a food business, particularly somewhere like London where costs are so high.
Yeah. So you've now learned the skills, you've got everything set up, and now it's launch day. Do you remember like the first day you went to a market and sort of how it went?
Yeah, I do. It was a special Halloween market in Dulwich in southeast London, and looking back, the business has changed so much in that time. But it was great. I was maybe a bit overly ambitious, so it was a really late night the night before, getting everything ready. But I was incredibly excited, and it was a great event. I sold out, which was brilliant for my first day. And gave me a completely unrealistic expectation of how things would be in the future. The fact that I sold out on day one. But yeah, it was good. It was really good. I really enjoyed the first day.
Amazing. And I mean, people do know this about you, but you were also, you didn't just give up your job, did you? You were working at the same time as trying to navigate all of this. I mean, that must have been pretty intense.
It was intense. Yeah, it was intense. I started things off very small because I didn't want to take a massive risk. But what that meant was I was working 4 days a week. I was working Monday to Thursday. So then in the evenings, I was doing all the sort of prep and everything, and making things Fridays. So I carried on working, but it was intense. But that meant that I had the security of a job and an income, and it's definitely something that I would recommend to anyone that's thinking about starting a business. Is if it's possible to carry on working and start a business on the side, then do it, because it just takes so much pressure off.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing point, because a lot of people just try to jump in straight away, and it's, sometimes it doesn't always go to plan. So
yeah, and I think they do that without doing the numbers properly as well. So they maybe think about how much money they might be able to make, but they maybe leave out a lot of costs just through inexperience, or being a bit naive in terms of how much it costs to run a business. So when it actually comes down to it, they're not making the money they thought they were. Then they end up having to get another job anyway. You see it quite a lot with food markets and street food traders. Is a lot of business owners end up working for other traders just as an extra, like, 1 day a week of work just to kind of pay the bills. So yeah, if you can carry on working when you start, then I would recommend it.
And what do you think about this idea? So there's two arguments where it's like, you've got to spend a lot of time creating this perfect product to get it out there. But there's also then the other argument where it's like, just get something out there and get feedback on it, build it from there. Like, from your perspective, what is the best way to go? Like, how have you approached it?
Just get started.
Yeah.
Just get started. I think I think so many people would start businesses if they weren't worried about it being perfect. Because the thing is, you might think it's perfect, but then once you start selling it to a customer, they're going to start giving you feedback anyway, and you're probably going to tweak it and change it. It's very easy for you to think that you know what the customer wants, but customers will continually surprise you in terms of what they're after. So my advice is definitely just get started, because the quickest way to learn is to do it rather than wait until it's perfect. And then also then you can kind of look back and see how far you've come and see how much, you know, a product has improved, or the process has improved, or the business has improved. So just start.
Yeah. And
scary, but just start.
Yeah, no, it's just get out there and just see where it goes, because you can spend so much time up in here and
Yeah,
it doesn't even matter. So
yeah, exactly.
and I've heard you speak, this could be wrong again, but that sometimes doing this, you know, it's been quite a lonely journey because you're a sole founder, you've done this all on your own, you're working as well. I can imagine just how much time you must have just been constantly working. How do you think about sort of co-founders versus single founders? Like, if you could do it again, would you maybe do it with someone else? Or do you think, you know, for you personally, it's just up to the individual what works?
It's really tricky. Before I started the business, quite a lot of people recommended, you know, getting a business partner and not doing it on your own. And I ignored that advice, obviously, and just started. But I don't think I would change anything, because the main reason I didn't want to get a business partner is I just thought I'm never going to find anyone who's as emotionally invested in the concept as I am, and is going to care about it. There are times when, say, you know, there's a big decision to make, I wish that I could consult somebody else, because the buck always stops with you. Like, when you make a big business decision, if you've made the wrong decision, then you have to accept that you made the wrong one, and that happens all the time. But I wouldn't change it.
Yeah,
Because it means that, you know, as things progress, then at least you can kind of look at it and think, well, I did that, you know, I did that myself, and that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of it all adds to the pressure, but then it's you know, you only have to, it's yourself that's accountable for it at the end of the day. It's, you know, you're not other people. So
yeah, and I've seen quite a lot of businesses, you know, quite a lot of like problems between co-founders, whether it's like a sibling or a friend or a partner that they've started their business with. It can create so much tension in whatever the relationship is, because of the pressures of running a business. So at least if you're doing it on your own, then you don't need to worry about that. It can be kind of lonely, but I think as long as you can kind of build some sort of little support network, that takes a bit of the pressure off.
yeah, and I think a lot of people, they don't understand. Well, they do understand, but maybe they don't quite know exactly. Like, it's very difficult to start a business, and I know you have like I've already mentioned that you're working at the same time, a full-time job, and doing markets as well. But I know that you were also started the business from your flat, didn't you? So what was that like to try and get that off the ground from that place?
It was tricky. So I knew that to start a food business from home meant that I'd have to live on my own, but obviously living on your own in London is so expensive. So I moved into a studio flat in Peckham, which wasn't very big. So starting a food business from like the amount of like kitchen space I had was, I don't know, like about 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters counter. So I had to try and get very creative with spaces and racks and that kind of thing, so that I could just make everything, so I could just make all the stock. And then it was a case of also storing all the market equipment. So, you know, having like the gazebo and the tables and boxes of packaging and everything. Like, my flat just got completely taken over. And when I say flat, studio flat. So the room, like one room that I lived in, was just like business equipment everywhere. It was chaos.
Yeah. It's just amazing. It's just like, you're working at the same time, you're doing market at the same time, and you're doing this all in the place. I think it's just absolutely incredible, and it's just a testament to how the hard work, you know, sort of pays off. So, you know, well done.
It was still long, but it was fun. It was really fun as well.
And I mean, not only have you had great success at markets as well, but also on Instagram. I mean, your account has got a lot of followers. People love the stuff that you make. So How has Instagram been for the business? Like, what influence has it had?
Influence has been, Instagram has been fundamental to the business. I mean, I'm fortunate in that the products are quite Instagrammable. So back at the start, when I started to contact influencers, they were happy to come along and try the products because it was great content for them. And I was new, and influencers always want to try something new. And then it kind of snowballs because then they take a picture, they post it, then their followers see, and then they start to follow. So your following just kind of grows. So it's actually reasonably easy to grow your Instagram following right at the start. It's when you've been trading for a while, and this is my challenge now, it's when you've been trading for a while and you're not posting so much new content that the following really starts to kind of level off. So keeping people engaged is the biggest challenge now. But I think the way that I do that is I just try to give people a bit of kind of behind the scenes exposure, so that they kind of remember that this is just a small business and it's just me. And even though the Instagram following is all right, that it's not a reflection of the size of the business. It's still really small, and I think that just makes it feel a bit more personal. It makes people feel more connected to the business. It really helps.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a point I want to go on to in a minute. But just going back to Instagram, do you have what was your approach to the sort of influencer bloggers? Would you just direct message them and say come down, or was there more involved in that, or was it just a simple message?
Yeah, just message them. I think sometimes a lot of people think like, oh, if you message them, they won't reply, or they're going to be rude, or they're going to be arrogant. The majority of like the food influencers on Instagram do it because they absolutely love food. Like they're really, really passionate about it. So when they're contacted by a food business, particularly somebody that's small or just starting out, they're excited about it, and also quite often they want to help. They want to give you exposure. So I'd say if their email address is in their Instagram, then email them because they get less emails. But if not, just send them a direct message, and most of them will come right back to you.
Yeah. And have you changed the product at all to sort of make it more social media picture friendly at all, or has it always just kind of stayed the same? Or
yeah, that's been a bit of a kind of like conflict for me, because first and foremost, like taste and quality, they're always going to be like the most important things for me. It's a food business. Like I never want it to be gimmicky. It's always going to come down to how much somebody enjoys the product when they're sitting in their home and eating it. That's what's most important. But when you're doing things on Instagram, you do learn very quickly that the better something looks, the more engagement it's going to get, then the more followers you're going to get. So it does become this kind of constant battle of having products that taste great and look great. And I will always favor them tasting great over looking great. So sometimes that means just posting a picture of like a slice of pecan pie, which is just very brown and beige, like it doesn't look interesting. But in terms of the flavor, I know, and my regular customers know, that it's amazing. So yeah, so Instagram does pose its own challenges, but I think you just need to stick to your own principles.
yeah.
And even if that means having maybe a slower growth rate than some, I don't know, like a donut company that's posting loads of like really colorful pictures of donuts, they might have like a far faster growth rate because the images are more engaging. But for me, it's so much more important to know that my products, that I'm 110% happy with the quality of them.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a great point there, because I think you have a great relationship with your customers, and I know you just touched on it then about how you try to give behind the scenes, and I think you're probably one of the best at just giving such an honest, open, background view of actually what's really going on. And how have you found the response to that, like doing that?
It's been amazing. So particularly throughout the coronavirus pandemic, I've tried to give people a bit of an insight into the challenges of running the business and keeping things afloat. So I post quite a lot on my Instagram stories, not necessarily on the grid, but on my stories, just in the kitchen, or just giving people updates. I think I lose followers when I do that, because a lot of people follow a food account because they just want to see pretty pictures of food. They don't want to have somebody talking at a camera. But I'm fine with that, because then it's complete, like the people then that respond, I get so many lovely messages from people just saying how much they support the business and how much they want to do to help keep things afloat. So it's far more, for me, it's far more about like the quality of the following rather than the quantity. And and being honest, I think, is what's most important. People just have these ideas of what it's like to run a business, and I don't think they appreciate how fragile small businesses can be. And you've probably seen this as well, but particularly like food market businesses, it just takes very little for a business to completely unravel. And it's really important for me to help people realize that a business isn't like totally solid just because it's got 21,000 Instagram followers. Like, it's particularly in London, one of the most expensive cities in the world, it really wouldn't take much for it to completely topple. So I don't want to give people this like polished image of what the business is like.
Yeah.
To know what's.
And was that hard for you to get in front of the camera and talk about it, or did you just find it come naturally to you?
Yeah, initially it was difficult. It was weird. It was kind of weird just like talking and holding up my phone and talking. Quite introverted actually, and I hate doing presentations and public speaking and that kind of thing. But it's kind of strange that whenever I look at my Instagram stories and it'll say that like 2,000 people have watched it, because if I had to get up in front of 2,000 people, I would really struggle. But being able to do this on my Instagram stories just gives me a way of kind of connecting to people in a way that I feel comfortable with. So kind of going back to your very original question, Instagram is just so fundamental to my business in terms of A, marketing, and B, helping me connect with my customers.
Yeah. And would you give any advice to someone who, with social media, it's very tempting to kind of give this idea of perfection, but like you've said, you've kind of just given it, the honest view. Would you give any tips to someone about how to actually just overcome that fear of just laying it on the line and just being honest?
It completely comes down to like different marketing styles, because for me that's what works, but I appreciate for other businesses it might not be what they want to do. They might not want to portray that. So many businesses just, they want to give this really kind of like glossy and perfect image of what the business is like, and there's nothing wrong with that, because it just comes down to branding. But for me, the branding is about being real. That's all part of the brand. So it works for me, but it might not necessarily work for anyone. But I think if anyone is tempted to do it and is feeling a bit nervous, just do it. And the good thing about your Instagram stories is they disappear after 24 hours. So, even if it's something that you weren't totally happy with, then it's gone and it doesn't matter. So just try it and you'll get better at it.
Amazing. And I know you've mentioned, at the very start, the dream was bricks and mortar, that's what the goal is, fixed premises. And I know last year you launched a crowdfunding campaign to try, you found a dream site, you thought it was time, but also at the same time, business was very busy. And, unfortunately, I think the crowdfunding didn't go exactly how you wanted it to go. So how did that make you feel?
It was fine. I think around about that time I was feeling a bit lost with the business, because markets can really grind you down. Like, they're a lot of fun, but the constant grind of bad weather and bad sales and that kind of thing, like, it does kind of get you. So I sort of thought, okay, I need to go back to the original idea of what I want. So just out of curiosity, I kind of started to look at some sites, and then I found this one and it seemed perfect. So I kind of launched the crowdfunding campaign in a massive rush. Like, I should have spent like months researching how to launch a crowdfunding campaign, then find a site and then launched it. But I did it totally the wrong way around. And then also around about that time, it was autumn, and I remember we had kind of like 6 weeks of rain in a row, and I just had to do everything I could to try and keep the business afloat. So the crowdfunding campaign just got completely pushed to one side. So so it was a massive failure, but a huge learning experience as well. So I don't regret trying it. But if I did do it again, and I don't know if I would actually, but if I did do it again, I would do a lot of things differently.
So am I right in thinking the lessons is that it's just, because I've heard this before, it's just so time consuming and it's so much put up into it. Is that the case?
Yeah, it could have been a full-time job in itself. And I work 7 days a week just running the business, so I just didn't have the time to dedicate to it myself. yeah, so it was incredibly time consuming. So I think I would need to take that into account, and then I would just do far more planning.
Yeah, but I mean, you've now got a site in Peckham, and that's been a new experience for you. How's that been?
Well, it opened on the 2nd of March and then closed 2 weeks later
Oh, was it that
because of
quickly?
the
Oh no.
yeah. So we had February to kind of get the units like kitted out, and then it opened up at the start of March, and then the pandemic hit and it closed. So
Wow.
yeah, just bad timing on that one. But I think Peckham's a great place for small businesses and food businesses. So I really hope the project works out. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'd like to finish on a few points. So one of them I'd like to talk about is I see you sometimes on Instagram. You like to read business books. Are there any books for you that stand out that have helped your trajectory in business or helped you learn some lessons at all?
There was one book that I go back to, which is called Dear Female Founder, and it's a collection of letters written by female founders to either to their younger selves or to somebody that's thinking about starting a business, and it's just incredibly inspiring. It's just, I think there's maybe 60 something letters in the book, of incredibly successful women that have worked very hard, and although it's called Dear Female Finder, it is aimed at women, but I would recommend that men read it as well, because it's just incredibly inspiring. And if I'm struggling or feeling lonely, Dear Female Finder, yeah.
Dear Female Founders. Amazing. And is there anything particular that stands out for you? One lesson at all that really stuck with you, or is it just the whole book is great?
I think the whole book is great. Yeah. There's a lot of very different voices in there and people from very different backgrounds. But I don't think I could pick just one. Yeah, they're all fantastic.
And so, we are where we are now. What words of advice would you give yourself back in sort of 2016, 2017, when it was just about to launch the business? Is there anything now that you've changed your thoughts on that you wish you could go back and tell yourself? Or
I think maybe I would probably say to try and speak, if possible, to speak to more small business owners, just to get a kind of broader understanding of the realities of it. Because of my corporate background, I didn't really know any small business owners, so I just didn't know what to expect. And I think that speaking to more small business owners would have been really beneficial, just to get a more realistic picture of what life is like.
Amazing. And the final question, what tips or advice would you give to someone who was, thinking about starting a food business? Like, what would be, maybe 1 or 2 points that you'd say to them, to get them going?
I think the main one, and it's something that we touched on earlier, is just to get started, because I think if you're launching a food product, because it's, you've got recipes, excuse me, because it's, you're working with recipes, you can tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak. Just launch it, just start, and then your customers will give you feedback on what they like. Because if you spend too long trying to get it perfect, then you might never do it. So just start.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a great point to end on. So where can people find you, or a pie party? Where can they find you?
I think Instagram is probably the best place to go. So I do have a website as well, but it's sort of currently developing it to make it a bit better. But Instagram's where I'm most active, and as we said, putting things in stories, keep people updated on the business. So Instagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Claire. You've doing the research. I mean, it's just so inspiring, like the hard work and the effort that's gone into this. And then also when I was speaking to people, I mean, speaking to a few people you've interacted, like food bloggers, everyone just has just such nice things to say about you, and I think it's such a real to you as a person. So I think you've done a good job. So thank you so much.
That's very nice to hear. No, thank you so much. Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. You don't understand how much it means to me to that you guys have taken the time to watch this. Thank you so much. If you guys want to learn more, then head over to jgreenwood.com, and there's going to be some more hints, tips to help you. But if you guys liked it, then please hit subscribe, or head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and find Recipe for Greatness podcast and subscribe there. And if you guys liked it, please leave us a review, because I'd love to hear what you guys think. But guys, thank you so much for listening, and yeah, it means so much, so thank you so much. And we're doing this weekly as well. We've got amazing founders on. We've got founder of the Gourmet Burger Kitchen, we've got founder of Crosstown Donuts. We're talking like big brands. We're going to hear their story, and we're really going to hear about how they did it, and it's going to be so good. I mean, we've got PR founders, we've got founders of like big chains, and honestly, so much knowledge, so much to learn from. And I mean, I've learned so much already. It's going to help you guys so much. So if you guys love it, subscribe every week. We're going to be hearing more. Thanks so much, guys.